Welcome back to another amazing session of the One Earth Live Visionary Speaker Series. And today I'm really excited to introduce two dear friends, Sean Korn and Suzane Sterling, amazing visionaries who have devoted their lives to yoga and bhakti and uplifting the world through wellness and yoga practices and also through music. And I'd like to introduce them both to you, and they can just share a little bit about themselves. Suzane, welcome.
Thank you very
much. And Sean, welcome.
Thank you.
So I'd like to just start by maybe each of you can just introduce a quick, because there's we have a large global community watching here today. And if you can just go and then we'll just have our wonderful fireside chat.
Okay. Go ahead, Sean.
Well, my name is Sean Korn, and I have been a yoga teacher for 25 years. I teach all over the world. I'm really fortunate that my life keeps me on the road up until about 2 months ago. And I'm the author of a book called Revolution of the Soul. I am one of the co-founders of Off the Mat into the World, which is the nonprofit that Suzane and I can speak for Suzane too, I think, in saying this, that it's something that brings us both an enormous amount of pride over the years to see the ways in which this seed of thought that we had so many years ago together is now has a life of its own and has really impacted the community and helped people step into leadership. And so I'm very proud of Off the Mat into the World. And that's pretty much that's pretty much the extent of the work that I do in the world. It's really those things.
Thank you, Sean. Well, you've been a great inspiration for many of us. Thank you so much.
That is true. She's a very inspirational woman. My name's Suzane, and I am a musician, which is how I know Chris. Chris and I traveled the world making music together. And I'm also a yoga teacher and also a ritualist. So I've been doing large-scale rituals for 30 years. And as Sean said, 13 years ago, co-founded with Sean and Halakori, this yogic activism organization called Off the Mat into the World. And we've really been training leaders on the ground to embody their activism, to embody the yogic values, and to take them off the mat and into the world. So what we do is we support other folks and ourselves in healing the wounds that would prevent us from stepping into leadership, that would prevent us from being from having critical consciousness about the systems of the world that oppress. And so we're in this constant self-education process and education process with the wellness communities and beyond, in knowing that if we can learn how to heal wounds, take responsibility for our own complicity in some of those systems, and also learn how to collaborate on a local scale and on a global scale, we could be a force for change. We could shift the world in the ways that the yoga practice shows us that we want to, the world that we want to live in. So that's what I do. All the stuff I do is out there just supporting folks in self-expression, supporting folks in activism, and supporting folks in really reconnecting to the web of life.
Thank you, Suzane. I remember those wonderful days traveling with you around the world with our band. That was a great chapter. And yeah, your music has been incredible inspiration for me all these years. So great to be back in circle with you both. Yeah. So, we're at this incredible time on the planet. It's been definitely a pause moment and a deep moment to reflect. What do you think, we're learning now? What's the lessons here with this moment, which is everybody's part of it, the whole world. So you can't escape from it. Yeah. Can you share some thoughts?
Sure. Sean, you want to go first or want to go?
I'll go ahead. It's an interesting question, because I think that with everything that's going on in the world right now, Chris, it's not a one-size-fits-all. For some of us, we're deeply inconvenienced. For others, it's truly life and death, and that it's going to take generations to be able to turn this time around for themselves and for their family in terms of their survival. For some of us, we actually have the luxury to sit back, reflect, and reset, and think about the impact that this time has on the collective and the choices that we're going to make going forward. And I happen to be in that particular position. And so I'm comfortable talking about that, but I also don't want to dismiss the people who that kind of self-reflection is a luxury when their survival is at stake. So I know, though, for myself that this is a time where a mirror is being held up for us to recognize the interdependency that does exist and the responsibility that each and every one of us has to collective care. And that if we are not actively pursuing the care of our family, our community, our nation, our globe, then we are going to perpetuate the suffering that exists. Because what this time is teaching us is that we are only as strong as our most vulnerable. And that if there is to be a new normal going forward, that new normal must be recognizing the oppression that has existed, that the vulnerabilities that are very much apparent and are set up by the systems, and being committed to change those systems so that these systems benefit all people going forward. That we can't afford to be complacent, because our complacent screams complicity. And so this has been a time for me to reflect on, what do I have to do myself to really look at what it is that I value, and going forward, how I want to show up in the world, and to what degree do I want to hold our leadership accountable, and to what degree do I want to step into leadership so that I'm actually taking responsibility on a much bigger and more organized level. So this is spiritually a massive moment of great possibility for change. And this is also a moment where lives are going to be lost and changed, not necessarily for the better, for a long, long time. And so I think it's important to hold the complexities of that spectrum of what this time looks like for all of us.
Thank you, Seane.
Yeah.
Beautifully and well said. Yeah.
So I want to talk about the environment and what's happening in the world as humans slow down, as we find a sense of stillness, which goes against many of the structures, the global, political, and social economic structures that tell us more is more and faster is better. And the kind of consumptive race that we've been in that is completely unsustainable. So what's happening now is we're taking this step back, and we're being asked to slow the train, right? And as we slow the train, as we are not flying in airplanes, as we're not in our cars, we're starting to notice that the earth itself is finding regeneration. The animals, the web of life is waking up in a very interesting way. Something like 20 billion turtle eggs were laid this year. And so there's this rising up of the life force from humans stepping back and saying, we're not the end all be all right now. We're not the masters, the superior of all of this life. We're actually an intrinsic, interdependent part of the great web. And hopefully folks are noticing, oh, the air is clearing up. We can see the irony of like stay in your house, but then we're actually seeing how beautiful it is out there. And I'm hoping that as we continue to shelter in place, that we see what's happening in the world, we see this incredible life force rising up, that we perhaps take a look at the way in which we are, we have sort of like pretended that we're not impacting the planet in this very profound way, that we start to take responsibility for that we start to make different choices about that. And that we also tap into the you know, the opportunity to remind ourselves what is essential to us. What do I actually need to consume? What do I actually need to travel to get or to do? What is really important to me? What are the human beings that are really important to me? And as we start to move out of shelter in place and make those choices about who we interact with, I think we're going to have to really go deep to understand what is important to me. And, you know, for me, as someone who loves to get together with people and deeply believes in ritual and singing and rhythm and the collective community building around that, I think choices will have to be made. And I'm noticing that that is an essential part of my experience. That is an essential need in my life, right? The Dogon people say there's, you know, there's essential pieces to building community. Rhythm and singing is right up there, right up there. So I'm feeling that this is an opportunity for us to go within, be still, and really step forward from a very different, much more conscious, much more grounded place.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Suzane. So do you think, what would you consider are the pathways that are available for us now so we don't have to return to business as usual? Because historically we forget pretty easily as a community, as a global population. So can you share some of these from your perspective? Like what are some of these intrinsic pathways that are now available for us?
I'll go first, I guess. I think one of the pathways for us is to really notice that we have the capacity to interact with the people right around us, right? We can stay connected globally. We can build systems of global connection and global resonance, which is what, you know, your festival Earth Dance was all about, building global resonance. But then we have to actually be in connection with our neighbors and be in connection with our family in a different way and grow our own food. You know, the 13 grandmothers, when they came out and they said, you know, 13 indigenous grandmothers found each other many years ago, 15 years ago or something, and they've been putting this message out, and they're saying, you know, we have to live in harmony with the earth. We have to learn how to remember how to do that. And I think one of the pathways forward is building collectives, building communities of people who are willing to live together and willing to grow food together and willing to share resources. I think that's going to be really important. I think we have to remember how some of those ways of being much more in a deep harmonic relationship with the earth, even as we're building this global culture, because we don't even know how long the grid's going to be up, right? That might also come and go. So we have to build relationship with the folks that are right near us. And that is very different for me as someone who's been on airplanes a lot. So that's one of the pathways that I think is moving forward is important to us. And remember the rituals that help us to connect, that ritual, community, singing, moving, drumming, all that stuff. We can't live in isolation. We can't live in that kind of loneliness that is so unhealthy for folks. We have to figure out a way to move forward together.
Thank you. Totally feel that. It's like some of the visionary speakers on this weekend are all about this, creating this community resilience. Like, what does it really mean to become resilient as a community? It's exactly what you were saying, this sense of community bonding, and also the rituals is a really big part of it. The celebration, the coming together, the honoring of the community through this sort of sacred ritual moments. Yeah, thank you, Suzane. Sean, what's your feeling on that?
My hope is that people recognize that we have been in this deep patriarchal trance for a very, very long time, and it has been a part of our sense of self, and even our self-esteem has been dependent upon the doing and the moving and the manifesting at the expense of our collective relationships. And that for a true rebirth to happen, we have to move towards a more feminine model of leadership, which is more, and feminine, of course, not as gender, but as an archetype, but something that is relational, that is receptive, that's about the emotional body. And I do believe that this time of pause is giving us an opportunity to recognize the attachments that we have had to this doing and how it's really been making us psychologically and physically sick. And also the way in which it's perpetuated separation, because if you have, then that means I don't. Therefore, you become perhaps even my enemy, rather than recognizing the ways that we can work together to be able to take some of the burden off of each other and still manifest and still create, but in a way that's more sustainable. So I hope that this is a time where we can really look at the collective trauma that we've all been experiencing because of this patriarchy, and that we take actions for those who have the means, the opportunity, the bandwidth to be in service to this world, to begin to create that, what I think is a very necessary shift. Because like I said earlier, some people, this going forward is just finding a job and feeding their families. That's the best that they're going to be able to do. But there's going to be others who can actually change policy and call out the leadership that is so attached to that patriarchy because their own survival is dependent upon it, because their greed is dependent upon it, and because that's been the way of life. And so going forward, I hope that as practices, people can commit to yoga, meditation, prayer, therapy, the 12-step program or other programs of recovery, working with healers and life coaches in all different forms and religions and spiritual practices and cultures, and really go inward to detox from some of these belief systems that have been penetrating our psyche, and working with each other to help form a new world belief system that is more integrative and that's more compassionate, empathetic, and most certainly loving. And I believe that if we can do this, then this time in our lives will have been truly purposeful. And I'd like to try to make meaning of this time and not squander it by returning back to the very same patterns of behavior that we're addicted to, which is very easy to do. To your point, like, we forget quickly. It's because of our addiction to the sensation of this familiarity that we orient ourselves to what's familiar. We've got to change that pattern of behavior, and that takes all of us being accountable and calling each other up and out and in for the betterment of all.
Thank you so much. I'd like to you to share a little bit about Off the Mat, because it's been such an inspirational force for the whole yoga community and the global community at large. So can you share a little bit about the Off the Mat vision and mission?
Sean, you want to go ahead? I'll come up behind you.
Sure. What I can say about Off the Mat is that it, like everything, any kind of creative force, it has the ability to change and grow over the years. And when Suzane Hall and I first began it, I think we were also so young in our understanding of leadership and equity and justice. And at that time, it was really about purpose. And as we began to mature on our own path and recognizing that without equity, there is no yoga. Without justice, there is no yoga. And that yoga has to be in all the places where there is separation. And that understanding began to infiltrate itself into Off the Mat to what it is today, which really works as a collective, bringing in other faculty members besides the three of us who work in different ways throughout the community to raise awareness, to educate around justice and equity, and provide best practices so that we can all take accountability for our complicity and know how to be in really proactive dialogue so that we can create true social change. And so Off the Mat, you know, as Suzane mentioned earlier, our work is to bridge the gap between yoga, the inner work that we do, the transformational work, justice, and then conscious action, so that we can go out into the world and understand this inequity that exists and the way in which our systems are set up, both on a political level, but also on a communal level, a generational level, an ancestral level, and how that information lives within our body and influences the way in which we experience the world. And the work of Off the Mat forces us to have to hold a mirror up to take accountability for the belief systems that we embody so that we can make different choices in conflict and in chaos when it actually counts. So it's inviting us to normalize the conversation around our own internalized beliefs. And that includes our internalized racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia and ageism and ableism and all of the various forms of separation that exists within us as we're in human form and as it does. And Off the Mat gives the tools and the practices for us to be able to confront it and transform it, and then get out into the world and actually make a difference by putting our action where our heart is. And that is in understanding the interdependency that exists and our responsibility to that wholeness.
Thank you for sharing.
Wahoo! And I think I want to say that one of the things that we've been both modeling and also really standing for from the very beginning is the idea of horizontal, relational, collaborative leadership. This isn't about leadership stepping into the hero or the heroine's journey. This is not about the competitive patriarchal view of how we get things done. This begins from a place of vulnerability and self-accountability and self-responsibility. But once we've done some of that work, obviously recognizing it's a lifelong pursuit, then we begin to step into collaboration, and collaboration from a place of knowing that there is wisdom in the tribe, wisdom in the collective, and that human beings used to live in this way, and that now, as we've sort of separated ourselves out, we've forgotten this way of being with each other, where we actually can lift each other up, where we actually can utilize the best in each person, where we actually can learn how to communicate together and resolve conflicts, where we can actually, I mean, it's a lot of work to learn how to collaborate. It's not an easy process, but bringing it back in, making sure that all voices are heard. There's a very different stability to the structures. There's a very different way of working, and it's part of what is potentially healing, because what it reminds us of is we are all interconnected. We are all interdependent. What I do will impact you. What you do will impact me. I can't just shun you. I can't just be superior or inferior. I have to actually show up with all of me, invite you to show up with all of you, and then there's magic there. There is this thing that happens. There's a collective resonance when we're actually working together that can create something that has never been seen before. And we've seen it happen over and over and over again with our trainings, that people step in to their vision, their passion, their self-confidence, from a more healed place. They're willing to be in relationship, to be seen and heard, to be in that vulnerability, which is actually a strength, and then collectively come together and create change. And that is a very different vision for, I think, the kind of activism that's happened in the past, and also for the kind of just world structures that we've seen. So this is an interesting moment, because yes, there were pockets and collectives of people working together in the past. Now we have this ability to be globally connected, and we're seeing the nefarious side of that with multinational, corporations that are beyond international and national law. But we could also utilize it as a great tool for change, a great tool for the evolution of the human species.
Thank you so much, Suzane. Yeah, it's definitely, I feel like the body of work that you've developed over the years is so important right now. Yeah. Even more so. And are you, I know the Off the Mat was a physical sort of coming together, gathering. Are you doing Off the Mat online courses as well? Is it like a curriculum that people can join? There is. Okay. And where would, if we were going to invite the global community now, where would they go right now to learn more?
Well, we have a website, offthematintotheworld.org, and we have expanded our online trainings. The three of us teach an online intensive, which is our seminal body of work. We have one coming up that's a little bit of a deeper dive, since we're not doing them in person. And people have come through these workshops and created incredible organizations and projects that have had an incredible impact. And we brought some of those folks in as faculty. So we have an amazing faculty offering many different kinds of doorways into healing trauma, doorways into collectively thinking about critical issues, equity issues, justice issues, doorways into having difficult, challenging conversations, ways to do that. So we have an amazing faculty and a ton of online trainings that are available to folks through our website.
Fantastic. Off the mat and into the world?
.org.
.org. Great.
Off the mat, into the world.org. Yes. Woohoo. Anything you want to add to that, Sean? Did I forget anything?
No, I don't think so. Yeah. What I would really recommend for people, besides, of course, taking our training, anything that they can, if they look at our faculty, anyone who's doing anything right now around trauma and the mind-body connection, I think that that is singularly some of the deepest work that anyone can be doing right now, because our world is in trauma, we're in trauma, and because of the ways in which most people respond to trauma, people are anxious and stressed, and as a result could be acting out with drugs, sex, alcohol, internet, as a way to numb out. And I think it's an important resource for people to understand what happens to the body, to the mind, physiologically, neurologically, because of trauma, and how we can navigate this time and find healthier tools for self-regulation. And I know that our faculty, including Hala, has courses on this right now, and I think it would be really worthy of people checking out.
Yeah, I mean, it's fabulous to know that right now there is so much traction or, you know, availability of the idea of coming from a trauma-informed perspective. It's a relatively new in the health and wellness field, I would say the last 20, 30 years, but that's relatively new. And that it's one of the things that yoga also helps us with. Yoga is a trauma healing practice. And so getting clear, getting articulate about exactly how trauma moves in us, recognizing it when it happens could have a tremendous impact in political spheres, in educational spheres, in so many spheres of the world. So to Sean's point, you know, stepping into leadership without a trauma-informed approach is at this point right now problematic. So I agree. I think that it's really important for anyone who's doing any work in the world, and that hopefully include all of us, to understand how trauma lives in the body, how we hold on to it, how we can some tools and resources for how to come back to center when we do feel that trauma, and there's many tools for that, you know, ritual, singing, breath, grounding. There's so many tools that we can use. So it's a great time right now because you know, my parents' generation didn't have that information, but we have this information now, and it's spreading out into so many places. I think it will be one of the main things that shifts our world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we definitely invite the global audience watching today to please come and check out Off the Mat out. And we'll also be sending some, you know, the people who are signing up to the One Earth Live email list, we're going to send people some information about some of the presenters and things that are going forward so they can actually engage after this event, because it's not about just all coming together and then going back to business as usual, but here are some of the pathways. So we'd love to include some of the work you're doing in those mailers. And
Yeah.
Would you like to share any last words to the global audience before we end this amazing fireside chat?
Go ahead, Sean.
If there was anything that I could share right now, that it is an incredible time for all of us to really come together in a magnificent way that can lead towards this global healing, reconciliation, and peace, but it requires individual action. And that I hope everyone, if it's possible, can use this time to go in, to reflect, to sit with the discomfort, to make new commitments going forward, to not be afraid of what's being exposed right now, because these shadows needed to get excavated for us to be able to heal. And we can't change anything until we can first identify it, bear witness to our own relationship or attachment to it. Then we can begin the process of transforming it. So this is an extraordinary time, but it does require you and me and Suzane and Chris, all of us, to do the deep inner work necessary. And so use the resources that are available to you. Right now, going online has both its curses and its blessings. Use it well. Use it to get informed. Use it to get inspired. Use it to peel back the layers of illusion. Seek out artists and activists, poets, and politicians who are actually sending messages that are truthful, that are integrative, and that are moving us towards justice and peace. And avoid getting caught up in conspiracy or activation that is deemed strategically to separate or to create more oppression or more negativity. And so know that that's a choice that we make every single time we go online. And so choose the time that you have here now to get educated and inspired, and then pay it forward to the best of your ability, so that, again, when we look back at this moment of history, and God knows this is historical, we can know that we showed up, that we loved big, that we cried hard, and that we worked together to change the paradigms that have existed, again, strategically, to give a lot to some and very little to most. And if we can contribute to this collective liberation, then I think that we've used this time well, and we're able to make sense of the incomprehensible that I hope can benefit all souls.
Thank you. And what I want to say to this time, which is so isolating for so many people and so fearful and scary, is that, yeah, there is a tremendous amount of loss. There's a tremendous amount of grief. And to Sean's point, like, let yourself grieve. Let yourself grieve, not just in isolation, but grieve collectively. There is a long history of people coming together to feel deeply, to allow profound connection, but also to allow grief to move through us, to allow sorrow to move through us, to allow fear to move through us, to allow celebration to move through us. So as we've sheltered in place, I feel like we've lost an ability to connect in this way that's so intrinsic to humanity, that's so hardwired for us. We're hardwired for ritual, for coming together, for feeling deeply, not only personally, but within the collective. So if there's a way that you can reach out beyond isolation, if you're isolated, connect with people around you, even if they're not your people of choice. What I'm trying to say is, and I'm saying this from a closet, it's kind of funny, but what I'm trying to say is let your expression keep moving through you, move emotion and energy through you, move your body, get sound and singing moving through you, relate to others, play with others. I really don't want us to lose that sense of we're here together, and human beings can have so much fun together, even in shelter in place. We're supposed to be expressing together. We're supposed to be co-creating art and culture together. And my dear hope and prayer is that we deepen into that, and that we don't lose that sense of, and I'm not just talking about the celebration, although I think that's really important right now, play and celebration and deep connection, but also sorrow, grief, and how intense these times are. That's important for us to acknowledge together and individually. So let yourself feel alive, and know that we're all in this together.
Thank you so much. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you both here today.
Thank you, Chris. I know that you've been working toward this kind of vision for a long time. As we said, we've known each other for a while, and I used to do Earth Dance, which was the global festival for peace, and it's just, I'm really happy that you have used all your skills to bring this together. It's really lovely. Thank you.
It's been a true co-creation of amazing people from all across the world to bring this together this weekend, including yourselves too, for showing up. So thank you so much. And we'll be seeing each other again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Suzane.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome. Welcome.
Namaste.
Welcome
to the Global Days of Unity.
From the minute that I heard about Global Days of Unity, I understood that it was the thing for this time. The incredible coming together of people, music, song, prayer, that it's like a massive infusion of energy into consciousness, into the world. And what I love about it is it's completely accessible by anyone, anywhere. And let's create that togetherness and that cohesion third weekend of every month.
Deep inhale to the center.
Today at this session, we have a wonderful panel, wonderful presenters.
It brings together a unity that I don't think has ever really truly been done correctly. And just learning about the initiative makes my heart warm.
Put our thought into it and put intention into it, it can just be so powerful and can become so huge and have such a big impact.
I think what inspires me the most about the Global Days of Unity initiative is the experimental aspect of it, right? Like, this thing has never been done before. We've tried so many different things. We haven't tried people coming together with a sense of intention and joy. Let's try something new. Let's see what humanity can be. And I'm excited about that possibility.
If we send out love, then the world responds with love. So in Global Days of Unity, just imagine the consequence of a large number of people sending out wonderful thoughts of love, peace, and harmony, because we can change this planet just by the thinking of those wonderful thoughts. And in community, we re-empower each other, but we can also empower the world.
I want to invite you
The third weekend of every month.
Let us be together.
to the Global Days of Unity.
Welcome home.